Cam is back here once again with an MVP. God, Mark Oguschewitz is with us here tonight of, once again, of the Screen Forum and Underexposed Cinematic Treasures. We were talking about just different film guys, filmmakers we could do at one point or another, and this is like Peter Weir was like the one that stood out of the ones he listed, and I was like, well, fuck, he's on my list, but probably not for another year and a half, so I might as well let's do it now. I want more collaborations this year, and so I'm glad we did, because again, he's one who many people are familiar with, even if you haven't seen all this stuff. Like, there's no way anyone hasn't seen at least 3 of his movies. Like, it's just so common what he's got. He's had 14 films. He's attributed to being one of the many majors in the Australian form of new wave cinema, and he's also done 5 short films and even two documentaries. So
6 Oscar nominations.
Oh, wonderful! I'm glad you dug that up. So how would you describe his style, and how does he complement your taste in film, Mark?
He probably informed my taste in film because of how I discovered it as a filmmaker. I'm a character guy. I think character is the most important thing in a movie. Same thing with the book. And so I feel like sometimes when I watch Peter Weir as a filmmaker, he is more interested in who these characters are, what they're about, how realistically they would react to things, and then the plot. The first movie I ever experienced by him was Witness, and it's about a little boy who witnesses a murder, but bam, no, it's not. It's about these two people from different cultures kind of coming together and falling in love, even though they can never be together.
He has movies about identity, basically, especially with, and there's some of his movies where I've been like, that's interesting. I don't 100% love, but I don't regret watching. Like, I've seen You're Living Dangerously actually 3 different times, all just throughout my life. It's just one of those, it's a very intriguing story. It's not one that really like keeps my attention, but it's got some very intriguing material in it. And I think, like you said, I mean, every once in a while I'll see, like you were talking before we started, that some people shit on Green Book. I've seen Witness is kind of the popular
Green
movie.
Card.
Yeah, green card, not Green Book, but yeah, green card. And I've seen people even just shit on Witness once in a while. And I think he's a character study filmmaker, and that's like, that makes for any kind of good filmmaker, but he is kind of interesting in that he can kind of appeal to those who want a Peter Jackson or Steven Spielberg type epic, but he can also kind of appeal to people who are kind of more into like John Sayles or Jane Campion, and especially even Michael Cimino or Francis Ford Coppola, just people who are known for just doing expensive, epics that have dramatically rewarding material to study.
Well, with Peter Weir, I mean, his films always feel incredibly personal, no matter how big they get. Because even Master and Commander, which has got these big, battles with the ships and their cannons and all that, it's still a very, very personal film. And I feel like, the more personal the filmmaker gets, the better their films are. I think that's why Steven Spielberg is who Steven Spielberg is. And I think that's why E.T. is the movie E.T. is, because E.T. is a movie that's got, aliens and spaceships, and, it's a
World War II,
well, it's got a child's adventure, and this little puppety alien running around. But it's also it feels like a very personal story. Spielberg made a very personal story.
I mean, there's a reason he's doing a movie based on the life of his father, his like being estranged and feeling abandoned to some degree. And I mean, sorry, go ahead.
And I feel like the best filmmakers do that. I think the filmmakers that I love are always doing that. If you ask me who my favorite filmmaker is, I'm going to tell you Peter Weir. If you ask me who my second favorite filmmaker is, I'm going to tell you David Cronenberg. And Cronenberg came to me because of The Fly, which is a story that you at first think is about a guy who's turning into a fly, and it's gross and it's disgusting, and it's got all that. But no, it's not. It's this real human character drama where the woman is actually the main character, as she has to witness this person that she loved go through this disease. And so it's got this like really very commercial kind of sci-fi story, but it's also a very personal story underneath. And I think that if, when we talk about Peter Weir, I think all of his movies do that. I got to tell you personally, there's only one movie that Peter Weir has ever made that I didn't like. And it's very rare to say that about a filmmaker. How many filmmakers can you say their whole library, they only got one movie that you didn't like? And then if I told you what that movie was, you would say I was crazy, because everybody in the world would say I was crazy.
This is where I don't like how we get into this, because everyone acts like you have to love everything in the top 250. It's like bullshit. There's going to be some animated or silent films, or even just 70s movie that did not date well.
I watch Peter Weir movies, and there feels like there's personal elements there. The characters feel very personal. They feel very strong. And I feel that for like almost every one of his movies, the only movie, just because people are probably now wondering, is I can't stand Picnic at Hanging Rock. I find it incredibly boring, and I've given it 3 chances. People will tell me it's a masterpiece. I'm crazy. They're thinking I was going to say Green Card, which is a movie I think is totally misunderstood. But yeah, I just feel like, his movies, they've got these really interesting plots and stories that are being told, but it's the inner struggles and the inner stories that really come through. And I feel like he does it better than anybody else. He really gives us these character stories better than anybody else, because it feels like that's the most important thing in the story. No matter if you're surrounded by ships firing cannons at each other, or a little boy witnessing a murder, or these guys crossing a desert, or a small town that's, using car crashes to finance their economy, or whatever it is, it's the characters.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. I did see The Cars That Ate Paris, I want to say probably 4 years ago, on Turner Classic Movies on their retro night every Friday they do. And that was very intriguing, and I would have never even guessed he would have done it, because there's so many other great filmmakers who just always evolve, and sometimes you got to check twice to realize, that makes sense why they did that. I totally understand, even without seeing the special features, why they did that, why this is a Roger Donaldson movie, why this is a Bruce Beresford, or who's another great guy, Philip Noyce. This is like, this is a suspenseful political drama. Of course it's a Philip Noyce movie, but yeah, Cars That Ate Paris was interesting. Is like, when I saw that I was already going to check it out, because it's like, Peter Weir, I love Peter Weir. But then I see it, and I was like, interesting, and totally appreciate it. So yes, I've heard many talk about Picnic at Hanging Rock, and I just found out about The Last Wave. I don't know how this flew over me. I've never seen it. I want to see it, but the Cars That Ate Paris that you reference is interesting, because it's like, I don't think I've ever seen a sci-fi fantasy movie that really truly tears apart, figure of speech, and then jokes about the car industry.
It's an interesting movie, because you can really feel the director feeling his way. It was his first feature, and there's some things in it that don't necessarily work, but overall, for a first-time filmmaker with a very low budget, he fills it with a lot of really interesting moments and a lot of really interesting themes. And it's definitely worth checking out, but you got to make sure you're right. But you got to make sure you watch the right version, because
there's a few different versions.
Yeah. As I was preparing for talking to you, I listened to some other people talking about The Cars That Ate Paris, and it's so obvious that they watched the American release, which was cut up pretty bad.
I'm not sure which version I saw. I might have been a Criterion Collection thing.
Yeah. I don't know if it had a Criterion. It might have. The version that I have is on DVD, which has got a transfer that he supervised. So I know that it's the version he wants you to see. And I had no problem understanding it. And I'll sit there and listen to these people talk about the film on their podcast, and they're, I didn't understand this. I didn't understand this. And I'm like, well, I got it. But that's because in America, they cut it up really badly, to the point where there's a great interview on the DVD where Peter Weir talks about a guy approaching him and saying, you don't know who I am, but I know who you are. And Peter Weir's like, who are you? And he's like, well, I'm the guy who destroyed the cars that made Paris when they made me edit it for American release. It's just, make sure the people need to, when they watch it, make sure that they watch the right one. And they also have to understand that there's some stuff in it that if you're not Australian, you may not fully understand, because he comes from a different place. And so his movies are going to be taking on themes that might directly relate to Australia. Like, it opens with a kind of a take on a commercial. And I know a lot of people are like, what was that? It's like, well, if you lived in Australia, you'd get it, because there's a take on a popular commercial he was kind of parodying.
Right.
And so it's definitely an interesting movie. But yeah, you got to make sure you watch the right one. It's got some interesting performances.
It was just very inspired, and
it's kind of crazy at times.
Yeah, but I mean, compared to other people where you're just like, they didn't know what they were doing, nothing personal, but it was like, you basically, you definitely feel a movie which is having to take a lot of compromises, but at least you're kind of cool with it experimenting, and its ideas stand out, just like any good, beginning sci-fi or horror movie. And it's kind of just all that matters. And I mean, compared to other people who are just like, hey, I know this got you on the map, but oh man, I don't like it. and so I have not seen Picnic at Hanging Rock. I still have not seen Green Card, and I have not seen Fearless, even though I know entirely what Fearless is about. So
here's the thing.
Victim.
Yeah, here's the thing. You'll probably want to see Picnic and Hanging Rock. I didn't like it. I find it very boring. It has no conclusions in the ends. It's about these girls who go missing, and you never get any
Sounds
answers.
like a party.
But he does that intentionally. I thought it was very slow. Green Card, I think you should give it a chance. I can get into that in a second.
Totally.
And Fearless is just amazing. It is some of the best directing Peter Weir has ever done. Jeff Bridges is amazing, and Rosie Perez will have to pray to whatever God she believes in that she'll ever give a better performance than she gives in this film, because she's so good in Fearless. Excuse me?
She's a cool gal, but yeah,
she is absolutely amazing. And there's one moment in Fearless. It's people who've seen it will know what I'm talking about. They have the YouTube song playing over it and everything. And basically Rosie Perez's character feels guilty for her son's death because her kid died in the plane crash, and she kind of blames herself for it. And Jeff Bridges sets up this situation to prove that there's nothing she could have done, that her son, she was not to blame for her son. Everybody talks wildly about this scene. I'm trying to be, since you haven't seen it, I'm trying to be spoiler free as I'm talking about it.
I know there's some tragedies in it. I know it is a very inspiring
but as much as people love that, but as much as people love that scene because it's a really impactful, powerful scene, there's another scene in a mall with Rosie Perez just looking at this woman and her child. And it's a very subtle scene. And Rosie Perez plays it off so well. It's so powerful and it's so moving. And, all of Fearless, though, I mean, it's one of those films that got taken down from bad timing, because it came out right before Schindler's List.
That and, kind of like The Fisher King, which is just so wild because, here, Weir has worked with both Robin Williams and Jeff Bridges. It's interesting how like these movies were just too personal. They're just very hard to market, and they're found endlessly on occasional movie channel screenings. And you're just like, God damn, cinema is really good, but underseen. Yeah, it's just, with Fearless, I mean, it opens in this really extraordinary way because it's a movie. Okay, it's a perfect example of a movie where I say, Peter Weir is not as interested in plot as he is in character, because it opens in the aftermath of the plane crash. They're walking through cornfields. The plane crash has already happened, and this scene is all about Jeff Bridges. It takes a while before you get to see the full shot of the plane crash, because that's not what it's about.
And we don't actually see the plane crash to the end of the movie. We see little pieces and flashback and stuff like that. But it's not about the plane crash. It's about how the plane crash affected these two people. It's really, really amazing. It's weird because let me put it this way. The way that I came to be introduced to Peter Weir, I know generally on these shows you'll ask people, well, how did you get your introduction? I didn't see a lot of movies growing up. My parents,
really?
Yeah, no, they didn't spend money, and so we didn't go to a lot of movies. And then my parents were divorced, and me and my father had nothing in common. So it would be like I'd go spend the weekends with him because my father was really big into sports, and I really wasn't. And so I spend the weekends with him and be like, well, what do you want to do? I don't know. You want to go to a movie? And we go to the movies. And my father was more interested in the Charles Bronson films and the Clint Eastwood movies. Okay. And I mean, Clint Eastwood, guys. Yeah, Clint Eastwood's gone on to do some really great stuff, but most of the stuff at that time that was coming out, it was just, who
will he shoot at the end of this scene?
Yeah, it was one action scene after another, and it was basically, the popcorn kind of movie where you didn't really think when you went and watched a movie. You just sat back and had a good time. And I got no problem with that. I love those movies now. I just watched Charles Bronson's Death Hunt about a month ago, enjoyed it, loved it. I love those kinds of movies too. But then one week...
For growing up, it's got to be kind of frustrating because as a kid, you kind of want something that's challenging, intriguing, resonates with you.
As a kid, I was perfectly happy going to see the Goonies and stuff, the stuff that just had action and this.
How about when you got to a teen where now you want something more besides watch Star Wars or the same Disney movie again?
It didn't necessarily bother me. I just, I was enjoying the movies. That's all that was mattering.
No, it's cool.
I know how people are. Everybody's different, but to me, I was enjoying these movies. I didn't really say anything special about it. Movies were movies. They were just a place to go waste 2 hours and have a good time. There's no difference between going to a movie and maybe going bowling. You had a good time. And then one week, we're like, what do you want to go see? I don't know. There's this movie Witness. It looks good. It's about a kid who witnesses a murder. And it stars Harrison Ford. He's Indiana Jones, and he's Han Solo. So
that's what I love too. He has such unrecognizable roles from actors at the beginning of their careers, and leading men, rising kid actors, underutilized actresses who are now, award-winning A-listers. It's just like, Gallipoli and You're Living Dangerously. Those are two early, not so action-based, dramas for then popular Mel Gibson, and Linda Hunt got some awards from.
He challenges his actors by putting them in roles that you wouldn't expect them in, and when we get into, if we talk about Mosquito Coast, you'll know exactly why.
Oh, totally. I'm glad I saw it 2 years ago because I was like, I've been meaning to watch it. It's just never on, or the DVD's out of stock, and it was just like, I'm gonna find this one way or the other, and it's like I'm glad it did because I'm told it's the darkest role Harrison has ever played.
Yeah, well, and it was, but with the Witness thing, I'm thinking to myself, Han Solo, Indiana Jones. This is just going to be about a guy who he has to protect a little boy who's a witness. There's going to be car chases. There's going to be gunfights. It's going to be exciting. And we went and we saw it, and I'd never seen a movie like this before. It was not that at all. It starts with it starts with a funeral. It's like 15, 20 minutes before we even get to the point where Harrison Ford comes into the movie. So it's like 15 minutes before the murder or something like that. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, okay, this is cool. I didn't know who Danny Glover was at the time. I didn't discover Danny Glover.
He's the main assassin and freaking Lucas Hosh. You see him in just about everything now, guest starring on TV, big movies like Inception, but he's like he will always be the kid from Witness, just grown up. Who's a great actor.
That's Lucas Haas. I didn't know I didn't know who Danny Glover was at this time, because Danny Glover hadn't really done a lot at this point.
Yeah, he was just a bit part.
I discovered him kind of a couple of months later when he came out in The Color Purple, and then of course we had Lethal Weapon. So with me, it was kind of like, this is a Harrison Ford movie. It's going to have a lot of action. And then I walked out of it and I just didn't know what to think of it. And I went home and I was talking to my grandfather about it, and I started to realize what movies could really do. here's an action movie that could have just been taken as an action movie, but no, we got to know who these characters were. We got to know about cultures. Well, wait,
identity.
They don't get together in the end. What's this about?
An Amish community. We've never really seen something like that before. And
it was a movie that really made you think.
Yeah.
And then when I was talking to my grandfather, we started talking about one particular scene, and it's probably one of my favorite scenes in movie history now because of this, but it's the scene where the bullies come into play.
Yeah, Viggo Mortensen and then Unknown and the guy from Carl from Die Hard, one of his first roles.
But the bullies come in because Viggo Mortensen and Alexander Goodenough, who was.
Yeah. That's Carl from Die Hard. Yeah.
yeah. So they're playing Amish characters. And so there's this scene where, it's towards the end of the movie. We're thinking Harrison Ford and Kelly McGillis might get together. Harrison Ford might even be able to live with the Amish because he's starting to get to know them. And so the scene comes up, and these bullies are bullying the Amish. And the one character, Eli, the grandfather, stops Book, who's played by Harrison Ford, because Book's getting up. He's going to do something about it. And Eli says, it's not our way. And Harrison Ford goes, but it's mine. And he goes up and he proceeds to beat the crap out of the guy. And that to me, in any other movie would have action scene where we root for
it would have been heavy-handed or felt like a last-minute rewrite. But fortunately, it sets enough with the brutal opening murder and then just him getting to understand everyone. You're like, okay, he's not going to play by any rules. He's going into a town he's not familiar with or comfortable in.
Yeah, well, and it could play as just that too. And in a Bronson movie, it might play as something like that. But here it's got two other pieces of importance that you don't realize. And one is it's how they find out where Harrison Ford is. But there's also the element of, he's not going to be able to live with the Amish. He's not going to ever be able to live in their ways. He can care about them. He can respect them. He can even love them. But he cannot be with them. He is going to have to leave.
He can't get attached, even though he is.
Yeah, I mean, but the scene isn't about brutality. It isn't about, watching Harrison Ford beat up some people and having us go, yeah, it's something deeper. There's so much more going on there. And I started to realize, oh my God, that movies could really this was when I started to realize what movies could actually do. And I started
watching. They don't have to be shocking or special effects epics. They can be...
Yeah, they can be meaningful. There can be a lot more depth to them. And so I just started watching movies very differently after watching Witness. And so I started, as I started kind of, checking out more stuff by Peter Weir, because he came out the following year with Mosquito Coast, which was a movie that a lot of people
did. Helen Mirren and River Phoenix.
Yeah, and a lot of people didn't seem to like that movie for some reason. And I personally think, and here we go, a lot of people are going to hate me now, but I think it's because it forces you to look at a side of yourself that you might not like.
And Paul Schrader was used to this. Here he is coming off of Martin Scorsese movies like Taxi Driver and Last Temptation of Christ, and he's doing another study showing how anyone can break or contradict their principles at any minute. And it's a Sierra Madre type plot.
It was an interesting movie for me because, first of all, I know so many people who, when they talk about politicians and all that, they'll be like, oh, they suck. They don't know what they're doing. They can't, because everybody thinks they can do better. And Ali Fox is that kind of character where he looks at America and he thinks he can do better. And then he goes to do better. And there's all sorts of problems and this, that come up. And it starts to get to him and he starts to lose it. And look, up until a week ago, people would ask me what my favorite Peter Weir movie was. And I would always kind of go back to Witness. And I didn't know if it was because it was the first movie that I saw by him. And it was the movie that affected me so much because it really taught me what movies could do. But as I was watching Mosquito Coast again, I started to realize this might be his best movie. I don't care what people say, because you can really sense two master artists at work. One, Peter Weir, who is basically taking some real risks, taking a person who's known for being a hero and making him an anti-hero, making us as a people look at deep inside ourselves to a part of ourselves that we might not like.
Yeah,
he's telling it all.
Confront or correct. We just kind of.
He's telling it all from River Phoenix's point of view. So Harrison Ford's not even necessarily the main character. They're giving it to some kid. And then the other master we're seeing at work is Harrison Ford, who really seems to be enjoying himself. But this is by far his best performance. He truly disappears into it. He's not. He at the time wasn't scared to say, "Yes, I know people want to see me as Indiana Jones. They want to see me as Han Solo. They want to see me as a hero." He really took this opportunity to prove what he could do, and he's so much fun to watch while watching this movie. And he's effective. He proves why he at the time was one of our best actors. You know, I feel like later in his career maybe he started to kind of waver a little, but
they just couldn't get away from, you got to run around saying my wife, my family, and he's like,
yeah. I mean, he's great in The Fugitive too. So, but and he still gives us some good performances. He was in that baseball movie 41. He's good in that. And
42 was really good.
42, that's the name of it. And but for me, I don't think he'll ever, like I said about Rosie Perez and Fearless, I don't think Harrison Ford will ever give a better performance than Mosquito Coast, which is just
I saw there was even an Apple TV miniseries, and I'm like, not going to even bother. Nothing personal. It's not even not liking the main actor, who's actually the nephew of the author on which the movie is based upon. But I'm like, you just can't get any better than this movie. It's just
from what I've read of it, it's nothing like, the story's nothing like what.
So crisis averted.
So I don't know. I mean, I personally don't like to judge anything till I've seen it. There's too many movies that are like favorites of mine.
I don't do trailers or anything. But it was one of those where it's just like, this movie is so good at socially and mentally challenging me that why even try and recreate it? It's just not going to get. It's raised the bar so high, it's too good for its own good.
But you got to be careful, because I've seen movies. I've reviewed movies on my website, Underexposed Cinematic Treasures, that started out as, I don't want to see that. Look, that looks terrible. Oh God! And one of which was Alfonso Cuarón did Little Princess, and I literally got dragged to that movie. I did not want to see that movie, and it's one of my favorite movies. It is so well done. It is so fantastic. And so I've learned never to judge anything until you've seen it. But there is the element of, but I got these 5 movies I want to watch. I'm going to watch, you are going to pick and choose which ones you decide to watch.
You have to, but.
And I don't really have a desire to see that redo of Mosquito Coast either. But if it's on one day, I might give it a shot and see what it is. And I'll go into it with an open mind. To me, when I watch, I mean, the score is fantastic in that movie. Helen Mirren's really great. Even in her little bit part.
By the way, they're reuniting on that Yellowstone prequel spinoff.
Oh yeah.
Coincidental. It took me a moment to put that together. Wait, you're thinking a movie here? Oh, it's the Mosquito Coast.
Then even Martha Plimpton, who's got a very small role, really
years before being the sitcom go-to gal, and almost 5 years before what's it got? Parenthood. Yeah, so it's like shit. She and dynamite cast, and she was in that other movie where she played opposite River Phoenix, where she's really, really great. The Sidney Lumet movie, Running on Empty. Yes, and I was fortunate enough to even see that around, I want to say 2017 on Turner Classics. I was like, great, there's another Sidney Lumet movie I've been meaning to see, and I had finally found. But it was just like, man, River is a great actor.
So now, I mean, literally, Mosquito Coast was, I think, the second movie by Peter Weir that I had seen. And so now I'm like caught, and he's just totally changed my life. But I haven't put together his name, Peter Weir, yet, interestingly enough. So I just seen these really
movies, even playing young Indiana Jones, and you're like, but wait, who's this weird guy? He's the witness guy? I didn't know. 2 different movies.
Yeah. At that time, I was just discovering movies, and I didn't really put together the filmmaker aspect of it, although I was recognizing the actors. And of course, I knew Steven Spielberg and people like that. But I don't know if you saw Gallipoli, but I had a friend. She was working in the AV department I have a friend. She was working in the AV department in the library at my college at the time. And she had a big crush on Mel Gibson, told me I had to watch Gallipoli. And to this day, I think that the worst thing about Gallipoli is last 10 minutes is so powerful that you kind of forget the rest of the movie. And you'll be watching the rest of the movie going, wow, this is a great movie. But that last 10 minutes, and I'd never experienced a closing shot like the closing shot of Gallipoli. And I mean, you basically got the main character. I'm going to spoil this for everyone, but he is killed in the final shot, and they freeze frame on him being killed. And I've never seen anything like that.
It was kind of like the Deer Hunter, where people were showing is like, obviously we're not going to be just, none of these are ever going to end happy, but at the same time, we're going to show how precious life is growing up as a kid. And another one of my favorite things when it comes to Peter Weir is he always ends his movies in that kind of, this is how it would really end kind of thing. You blur away, you focus on it, and then slowly fade. And it doesn't feel like a cheat. It doesn't feel like he's catering to any formula. He's just trying to go for a very atypical, realistic picture.
He's being very real. At the end of Witness, Kelly McGillis and Harrison Ford can't be together because it just wouldn't work. In any other director's hands, they'd probably end up together.
The producer would have said, "You will change that," and he's like, "No, no,
yeah."
I got a great start.
And then you walk out of the movie going, "Oh, I like the movie, but they're not going to be together in a week," No. And it's the same thing in Gallipoli. Who kills off their main character in that? In the final shot. The only ending that feels very un-Peter Weir to me is of all of his movies would be The Year Living Dangerously, because at the end of the movie, Sigourney Weaver and Mel Gibson, they get together on the plane.
Right. They're both reporters, gotten very close. And I know she's an embassy officer, my bad. But anyway.
Yeah, and so that one feels a little fabricated to me. Although I have a theory on it, because
it's fabricated, but they kind of make it work because they want to. Well, they don't say the typical things like "Oh, embrace me now." It's kind of more. Well, I mean,
I almost took it. I was thinking about this last time I watched it, where Linda Hunt plays Billy Kwan.
Great actress.
And she's absolutely fantastic. And for people who don't know, she's playing a male role, and she's absolutely fantastic. She won the Oscar for it. And Mel Gibson,
you could not do now, without someone being offended.
Yeah. And Mel Gibson plays a reporter. He goes to a war-torn country. I'm not political, so all that stuff kind of goes over my head. It's probably why it being more of a character-oriented kind of director with Peter Weir, I can enjoy these kinds of movies. And he falls in love with Sigourney Weaver, and she gives him a scoop, and she gives him a scoop not for him to run with, but because she wants him to be safe. And it's about to be a dangerous situation. And he wants to run with it, and it's all this stuff going on. And then they come together in the end. And I started thinking about this movie, and Billy Kwan, the Linda Hunt character, I started thinking, I wonder if that ending is appropriate, because this isn't Mel Gibson's movie. It's not his story. It's the Billy Kwan character story, because he's the one doing the narration. He's the one who pretty much moves everything forward. He introduces the two of them. He gets Mel Gibson, introduces him to the right people so he can tell his stories. And so as much as we're like, Mel Gibson's the main character, maybe it was Billy Kwan who was the main character, because we see a lot more through his eyes than we see through Mel Gibson's eyes, because he's got that woman with the sick kid who then dies. And Billy was this character who really looked up to the politician, and then all of a sudden is against the politician, because the politician has deceived them, and then of course, so I feel like it's more his story. Of course, he dies about 15 minutes before the end of the story, and I started thinking about that, and I started thinking to myself, yeah, but he may die, but if he were telling the story, I think this is how it would end. Mel Gibson would still go after the story, which he does, and then he gets hurt, and then he's trying to get his tapes to the plane, but they get taken away, and he has to choose to say, okay, take him, I'm going to go to the girl. And that just feels like if this movie were to end the way Billy Kwan, the character, wanted to end, this is the ending we're getting, and maybe it does work in a certain way.
So true, because he sets the tone and the mood. and the material up to where you're accepting really of where it's going to go. Because there's just so many other movies which unfortunately just go through numerous rewrites, and you're just not sure what was truly going on in that noggin of theirs. There's just too many cooks, too many producers making changes. And fortunately enough, he must have just been just on budget and on time, save for his last movie, and just been able to just, again, bring everyone together and, or not kill anyone giving notes, you know, so no one was tempted to even take it away from him to begin with. You know, anyone looking at his productions and the giant set pieces would already probably associate him with like maybe a David Lean, Lawrence of Arabia, or Gunga Din. But
look at Master and Commander. Okay, here's Master and Commander.
Yes.
It's a story that takes place on the high seas. Any other director would give you all these swashbuckling moments.
Anyone was going to fund that. Russell Crowe, sign me up. But
but I mean, you're expecting, you know, sword fights and the guy, you know, stabbing the sail with a knife and riding it down, and you know, all that kind of stuff. And we get some really great action scenes, but it's all very realistic. It's got it's all very real involved. Like you would think, oh my God, if this were to happen in real life, this is the way it would go down. And then the movie ultimately just becomes about characters. The stuff with what's his name, who played the friend of Russell Crowe, Paul Bettany, is absolutely fantastic. Yeah, he's absolutely fantastic. And then there's this story about this little boy, this young kid who's on the ship, who has to have his arm removed. And
if I may backtrack. So this movie was as much a part of my life. I saw Dead Poets Society at 2 different high schools growing up. And, you know, Witness was on Oxygen all the time. So obviously I would always see parts of that one. And Truman Show was the first one I saw. I'm age 12. My mother's getting more experimental, getting more movies from the video store that are good set pieces. And I'm like, holy
how
fuck.
good was that movie? You want to talk about a director knowing how to recognize and use his actor.
People shit on it now, but I'm like, it's a good goddamn movie.
And Carrie is just fantastic. And
Natasha McElhone. You've seen her in everything now, you know, Designated Survivor, Californication, the first, the new Halo show she's great on. But I'm always associate this and Ronin with like, that's where I was like, Natasha McElhone, the actress everyone should look out for. And I was like, Ed Harris as a bad guy who thinks he's doing something good.
Those 2 performances, Jim Carrey and Ed Harris, just blew me away because they were such humanity,
TV, man. And well, it's pretentious, and I think that's why I never even. I'll even probably say that's probably why I never gave a fuck about reality TV, unless it was like a funny game show or something. Because it's like I see how staged and
how unreal it is,
morbid, and it's not real. And I mean, I was on an episode of Cheaters, for fuck's sake. So yeah, no, I know it's all bullshit. But he launches all those actors to the next wave. You're taking them more seriously. I mean, his final movie, The Way Back, was one of the final movies I saw with my grandmother before she unfortunately passed away from bone cancer. But it was one of those, is like, we thought about it for days. It's such a simple concept. Once again, he's working with Ed Harris. You got Jim Sturgis, who's kind of what's her name?
I don't know how you pronounce her name.
Saoirse Ronan. The first thing I ever saw her in. I'm like,
she's fantastic.
What's she going to do next? And she's great. Mark Strong has a brief role, but I was like, here's what would happen if Polish POWs, you know, escaped and they had nothing but the desert and their dreams. And it was like, what a hell of a movie. That's not easy to do. And we think about it for days.
He takes plots that could very easily be turned into adventure movies. And he says, in this, I'm going to tell you it with real humanity, real people, they're not characters. They're people that we can relate to. They have the stories. Yeah, it's incredible. It could be this incredible story about them having to travel 4,000 miles, however it is, to freedom across deserts and mountains and stuff like that. But he adds real humanity to them, and he makes them into people that we really, truly care about. And it's every single one of his movies, including Green Card. I dare people to challenge Green Card on me, because even Green Card's ending, I think that Green Card, I understand, you know, there are some moments in Green Card where it's like, this is kind of a rom-com, but it's not. Everything about it feels real. The way it's shot feels real. The moments, the way it ends with when they have to say goodbye, because guess what? They're not going to end up together, but maybe they could, because she can always go over and see them. It's just the way that he structures everything feels so true to life. You know, there's this great moment in Green Card where when
Still need to see this one, but you're selling me on it.
I'm going to tell you this moment, and it's going to make you want to see this movie. So at the beginning of the movie, Andy McDowell, who I've heard a lot of people complain about in movies, but they're not watching the right movies, because you need to see Unstrung Hero. You need to see Unstrung Heroes if you want to see what Andy McDowell can do. And so her and Gerard Depardieu's character, they get married because he wants a green card. She wants to be able to prove she's married. It's the only way she can get this apartment that she wants. It's got this incredible garden because she's a I'm trying to think what they call it. She's one of those people who deals with plants and loves plants and everything.
Garden scientist.
Yeah, and one of the parts of his story, as they're making up their stories and everything, is that he's a composer. And so all the way through this movie, you don't know if he's really a composer or if that was just part of his story. And there's this moment about halfway through, and Bebe Neuwirth is amazing in this movie. And halfway through this movie, Bebe Neuwirth's character's mom is having a party, and Gerard Depardieu and Andy McDowell go there, and Bebe Neuwirth's character's mom plays a piece on the piano, and they ask him to play. And it's this amazing scene because right beforehand, Bebe Neuwirth's mom has got all these plants, and they're going to sell the apartment. And Andy McDowell wants the plants to plant in the park in a much needed neighborhood where things are all getting not torn down, but things are falling apart. It's a lower income neighborhood, and
so
the woman
makes it stand out apart from just many other romantic comedies, because it's showing
they give her a real character and real wants and needs and stuff. It's incredible.
Instead of I want the dream man of my dreams.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is she doesn't even she's got a boyfriend, and he's probably good for her, but probably not the right one for her. But so they go to the Bebe Neuwirth's mom's house, and she tries to get her to give her the plants, and she won't do it. And so now they ask Gerard Depardieu's character to play, and he sits down at the piano. And you don't know what he's going to do. Is he a composer? Isn't he a composer? And he just starts banging on the piano, literally bang, 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 bang. Like he doesn't know how to play bang. Everybody's looking at it really weird. And the main reason this part of the scene works is because Bebe Neuwirth's character just finds it really funny, and she portrays it really well. And he stops banging, and everybody's disappointed, and they're all looking around and like, oh, what's going on here? And then Gerard Depardieu, who's he's French. He asks.
I couldn't tell. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, he asks Bebe Neuwirth's mom to translate for him because she also speaks French. And then he just starts playing this really beautiful melody, and he recites this poem that he makes right off the top of his head about plants and children and stuff. By the end of that moment, you're like, oh my God, what is this? They fooled us by having a bang, and now he's giving us this beautiful poem that's going to get her trees because it's going to convince the mom. And it's just this, you don't see these kinds of characters and these kinds of moments in these rom-coms, which usually feel very fake. The emotions feel unreal. Right. And here's the
Anyone
situation.
else would just focus too much on the laughs and have dead space in between the gags, and he's focusing, from what I'm taking away from what you're describing, it's just about the essence.
It just feels like a real human moment, because at first it's funny and then it's really emotional. And I think Green Card's got a lot of this all the way
tender.
Through. Yeah, and so you watch a lot of romantic comedies. I'm not a big fan because they all end the same way. Since they all end the same way,
speak for yourself. I do not watch a bunch of romantic comedies.
They all end the same way, and
yeah,
so you know where it's going to go. And so with this movie, it doesn't end that way because things kind of go.
Betty Davis, Judy Garland any day, but don't give me post '90s movies where it's all. Hell, don't even give me college comedies.
As much as I like Tom Hanks, I'm not going to recommend, some of these romantic comedies he did, like Sleepless in Seattle. And
yeah, I'm good.
It's too predictable, and none of it feels real. It all feels sappy, unreal. The scenes really don't come together.
I even like the screenwriter. I think she's a very cool gal, but it's just one of those. It's like, it's one of those movies where people have ruined it by just talking about it too much, to where it's like, even if I was in a lazy Sunday mood, I just don't want to watch that right now. The 90s have ended. I want to watch more of a fun blockbuster.
I'll be interested to see what you think of Green Card, because a lot of people tear it down, and we got to remember it was nominated for all sorts of screenwriting awards. It got an Academy Award nomination for screenplay.
I would get it mixed up with I think it was French Kiss by Lawrence Kasdan, and Kasdan.
I didn't like that movie.
Okay, well, I didn't remember it, so there you go. But I mean, it was kind of that whole wave of movies where it's like someone from another country, hooks up with someone in a different country. Yeah, you know what I mean. And I feel like, from what you're selling me, Peter Weir is basically, I would say, the more successful. And
what he does is he takes stories that other people also do, but he does them better because he says, I'm going to give you real characters, real people that you can really care about, and it's their internal journeys that are more important. So with Green Card, there's this really great internal kind of drama, and it just feels real and true to life. And Fearless, oh my God, it feels everything about the movies that he does, everything feels very real, true to life. I can relate to these people. I'm not being spoon-fed a bunch of garbage that I've already seen 25 times. I'm being given the reality,
You recently described Martin Brest recently. Do you think he's kind of similar in how he just takes natural moments? And I mean, I would describe Peter Weir.
Martin Brest hasn't made a movie in a while. He's kind of disappeared from the planet.
I wonder if he just really hated his last outing and he just said, nope, that's it. But I mean,
I haven't seen his last outing, but I am a big Martin Brest. I'm a big Martin Brest fan. Geely is hysterical. Is it hysterical in a bad way, though? Because I hear bad things about it.
Oh, yeah. I would do a double feature of that with The Room. But
okay.
My main point, though, is like Peter Weir, I would say, probably is the more commercially feasible for the most part, Milos Forman. Because like Milos Forman, so many great movies. Man on the Moon, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Amadeus. Yeah. But studios understood why his movies connected with audiences. And like every 5 years, we're willing to shell out money for them because there's like, hey, they don't make their money back, but there's something about his material everyone wants to collaborate on and hope for the best. He's a master.
The best filmmaker. The best filmmakers out there are the filmmakers who can take, because every story's been told a million times.
Right.
You just got to tell it in an original way, and you have to know how to capture your audience. Milos Forman knew how to do it. Martin Brest knew how to do it. I haven't seen Geely, but I've liked everything. I think I liked everything that Martin Brest did, because I even liked that Brad Pitt movie whose name I'm blanking on right now. Of course,
Meet Joe Black.
Yeah, but of course, Going in Style and
which you reviewed recently, yeah,
and Beverly Hills Cop, and of course Midnight Express. They redid Going in Style. It's a good movie, but it's not the original. It doesn't touch on the original.
It's a totally different kind of heist movie. And people are going to say, "Oh, didn't I see that?" I'm like, I thought it was a 70s movie.
If people want to know about Going in Style, go to my website, Underexposed Cinematic Treasures. I did a recommendation on it, and I basically started with forget everything you know about Going in Style and let it introduce you to
just like Ocean's 11. People want to do a compare and contrast with that all the time. It's like you're talking about a totally different Rat Pack movie and a totally different A-lister.
I feel like the remake of Going in Style is what people thought they were going to get when the original came out, because on the poster it shows the three old men wearing, the funny nose and glasses. Yeah. You watch the trailer, it looks like it's all about a bank heist, but in reality, the bank heist is over 40 minutes into the movie, and it's just really touching. It's not even really a comedy; it's just really touching human drama about these people at the end of their life who. It's just an amazing movie. I can't say enough about it. But yeah, no, the great filmmakers are the ones who know how to give it that twist. That's why when you look at a really great Steven Spielberg film, it's because he took something and he made it personal. That's how he did it. He was able to make stuff like E.T. and Close Encounters. He could have had spaceships flying around, shooting each other.
Right.
And stuff
when
like
he does
that.
giant sharks
he kept it
and
personal.
dinos, he's doing the kind of fun movies he loved growing up. But it's like, that's different from Saving Private Ryan or Color Purple or, again, even Empire of the Sun, where he's showing personal material that he can convey on screen. And so backtracking a little bit, with Weir, so I see Dead Poets Society, Truman Show, Master and Commander, what's funny is I saw it years again later when some cousins were in town. They love epic movies like Gladiator, Lord of the Rings. And of course that has a bit of elements in both. My grandmother loved reading those books and she's like, they need to make a sequel to that. That is a great atmosphere and adventure and everything. It's everyone expected like an Errol Flynn kind of thing is like, oh, not exactly. It's not that or Pirates of the Caribbean. It is a showing what it's like to live like that at sea, at war, and kind of like the Horatio Hornblower thing. It's just like you're showing how there's a lot of boredom, there's a lot of cat and mouse, and then there's times where everyone's just on the deck, just eating an apple, minding their own business, and a tidal wave takes half of them off the deck, and so now you're rebuilding.
And there are some moments in Master and Commander. There's that moment where the guy is taken off is thrown.
Heartbreaking.
Overboard.
You never see a kid die in a what's supposed to be
but the way they do it, I mean, they could save him, but they can't because the ship is going to go down. So it's like
it's one versus many. It's not easy to convey. There's so many other filmmakers who like you mentioned before, like with Green Card, how anyone else would have been about the gags and making everyone be lit in a sexy manner is like anyone else who might have done this might have just not given a second thought or been like, oh, that'll backfire regardless of my actual morals. It's like, well, no, there's a way to show the brutal reality back then and then convey that everyone hates themselves for this. But it was likely a reality in that, got to sacrifice one for the many, but it's not religious or political in any way. It's more of a, hey, we could save him, but we've literally used up all our energy and everything. And
I believe the ship was taken on water, and if they didn't because a sail had fallen into the water and it was dragging the ship down, if they didn't cut the wreckage, I think they called it, they didn't cut the wreckage loose,
everyone's going to die.
Everyone was going to die, but if they cut the wreckage loose, they were going to lose this guy.
Not easy to talk about material now, especially with all the fear mongering and other stuff we've talked about in more controversial movies and real life incidents. And they're able to show, hey, this is historical to some aspect, and we're just giving you an idea of what it would have been like back then.
Right.
And I do applaud Weir for, again, teaming up with Samuel Goldwyn and Fox for this and co-writing it. And so many people give the ending shit. I'm like, I find that awesome because it wasn't about winning the battle. It was about outsmarting until you just call it a draw. It's like, I lost the chess match, but at least my crew was retained and we healed our doctor who that's another twist there. The doctor gets not killed in battle or injured, but just from a stray bullet while they're hunting. Kids are hunting for sport. And
no, they weren't hunting. They were watching a bird fly around. And then that one guy wanted to shoot the bird.
No, that's what it is. Yeah. And it's just like, simple accents. Here's what it would have been like that then. Anyone else would have wanted to write in, oh, they get in a giant fight on a horse. It was like, that
was the great thing about the kid's story, because the kid wants to be a fighter, and then during the battle, because I guess back then, there were young kids on these ships, and he gets hurt and they have to remove the arm. And the way they handle that scene is fantastic too. But then that character throughout becomes friends with Paul Bettany, and he starts to draw the animals. He becomes all interested in all the stuff that the doctor's interested in, but he still wants to be a fighter. And got
some good coverage though too. The movie came out the same year as Pirates and Final Lord of the Rings.
I believe it did pretty well in the box office, and I know a lot of people who love it.
And it was one of those, I had no idea, at the time it was meant to, start off a franchise, but it was one of those like, regardless of how it outcomes, Weir kept his eye on the prize. Make a hell of a movie that, again, emotionally resonates with you. You feel like they're living, breathing. There's good use of the Foley, but it's not to be cool or anything. It's literally to make you feel what it's like being on a ship. And I see so many movies nowadays and you're like, it's a closed off film set. Right. I don't feel anything.
I just looked it up, $211 million worldwide. So it did fairly well. It did 93 or 94 million domestically. I think the reason we probably didn't get any sequels to it is when the studios looked at it, because they do this with movies, they think they know what's being made and then they get it and like, well, what was this? I recommended a movie on my site called Duma where that exactly happened.
It was produced for Miramax and
now they're looking
multi-studio adventure.
They're looking at Master Commander going, man, I was expecting Pirates of the Caribbean. What's this? I don't know if Pirates of the Caribbean came out first or not, but they were expecting that kind of thing. And can we really do a sequel to this? This is more of a movie you don't do sequels to. But I think if they had done a sequel, it would have done really.
It can all be enjoyed, guys. But yeah, it's kind of like that same year. I mean, Charlize Theron, I was quoted as saying like she was on Howard Stern talking about one guy funded her breakout movie Monster just because it involves two women kissing, but he didn't know the context. It's about serial killers and true crime, and it's like some people literally are that fucking stupid. They will just throw money at something just because they like the sound of it, and it's like you want some of that so you can use that to your advantage because there's going to be plenty of people who like say watch a giant epic and they like it in a mindless way, and there's others who legit love it from everything from the scenery to the editing to the camera work. And it's just like it is amazing how it's like sometimes you can't even get the idiots to shell out money for you because they're just too goddamn stubborn. They really did not know what they signed up for.
The studios don't seem to understand that audiences aren't stupid. And but
that's not true, Mark. We gotta have exposition and
if they treated the audience smarter, they would find more people watching the movies.
And stop putting in sex and violence that doesn't
belong. And I have nothing against.
I don't need it in every movie to make it good necessarily.
I got nothing against sex and violence in movies, but I do feel like both should be there because they belong there. Adrian Lyne is one of my favorite directors, and he uses sex a lot, but that's because that's what he's exploring, and you got to have it there in order to explore the themes that he's exploring. David Cronenberg is another one of my favorite directors, and he's violent.
From the B-movie atmosphere, and he wanted to actually make ones that had a psychological...
But The Fly wouldn't be as powerful if it wasn't.
Anyone else would have focused on the effects or the actors getting along.
But I mean, if you remember, I'm going to spoil The Fly for people, but it's 1980 something. But at the end of the movie, one of the most powerful endings of any movie ever, Gina Davis has got the gun on him, but she can't pull it, so she pulls the gun away, and so the fly puts the gun back to his head, and so she can pull the trigger. You have to see that fly. You have to see how grotesque he is, because this is how badly this cancer has taken him. Yeah, it's like a symbol for cancer or AIDS.
And everyone's uncomfortable doing that nowadays. Nowadays, everyone's like, oh, shy away from the cancer. It's like, no, I got to feel the pain the scientist is going through. Otherwise, regardless of whether I can relate to them or not, if I don't understand them, then this movie's a cheat and an excuse for effects.
This is how brilliant the love story of The Fly is. It's about how bad it can get, but yet we still love our loved ones, no matter how sick they get. They make him look so grotesque and everything. There's that scene where she hugs him that everybody was grossed out at that time when that came out. But that's how much she loves him. And if he just had a bare minimum of makeup on, then that wouldn't be as powerful a scene.
No, that would have been okay. And when does he take his makeup off? It's just
it's sometimes when it's needed, but nowadays studios just put it in to put it in, and nothing should be put into a movie just to put it in. It should be there because it belongs.
What are you talking about?
And I feel sometimes I think it's insulting when you put something like you'll put a gay character in a movie just because you want to have a diversity in your movie.
I know many gay pals who get offended by that too, because they're just like,
it's insulting. Give them something to do. Put them in that movie and tell their story.
You'll see a political party in the movie, but half the time, like, well, why do I need to know where their position is?
Yeah, the
Isn't
thing
it
is
about showing their essence of being a politician?
If you want to use anything like that in a movie, that's fine, as long as you've got a reason. That's why
Backstory.
Moonlight is a fantastic film.
It's not an exploitation movie. It's a very
about
mature
something.
storytelling.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. And, but I think the same thing. If people are going to get on my case now, I'll say it's the same thing with heterosexuality. There's no reason to have that, that any kind of sex in there unless it's needed.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter. You don't do something just to do it. You do it because it's right and you got a story to tell. And
sometimes they will hint at someone and they're just showing how they're shady or they're abusing someone's privileges or they're a thief who's used sex. But and again, the right people will get certain clues. And then there's other times where it's just like, okay, but sometimes it can be poorly thought out, much like, say,
right.
Like I'm the main culprit behind this heist all this time, and Weir's been good at, hey, what does the character want to go, and what literally within first 10 minutes, like Dead Poet Society, it's a private prep school, and the two characters, this is what I already knew Robert Sean Leonard because House had just come out, but it's like, man, this is what got him on the map. This got Ethan Hawke on the map. After a few other fun, mindless kids movies, is like, but you're seeing them in this, and instantly is like, Ethan Hawke is kind of socially uncomfortable, but coming out of his shell thanks to the professor. And Sean Leonard, has awful parents who are meaning well, but just never ask what he wants. So it's a perfect predicament. Anyone else would elongate it or have the parents overact, or
they would have made it Robin Williams' movie and the kids would mostly
or
ignored.
let Robin carry the movie and not give him any guidance. Yeah.
And the weird thing is it's not Robin Williams' movie. He's not even the main character in the film.
It's the reason people went to see it, but no one was ready for it.
I've read in numerous places that Robin Williams said that Peter Weir was the director that he liked working with the most and learned the most from. And here's the guy who said, hey, you're the star, but guess what? You're really kind of, you're here to serve their story.
Right.
And that's why that scene where they get up on those desks is so powerful. It's not because of how Robin Williams is reacting to it, but that's how much his character meant to them. That's whole moment.
Great because you can't say that about today's world where everything's just political about what, and it's relevant. It's very annoying when you find so many people are like, I went to college, but man, my professors were dicks. You see too much of that. You don't see enough of the teachers is like, because there are good teachers out there. I have at least 3 of them who, if I saw in a minute, I would give a giant ass hug to. And like, you are my hero growing up.
Yeah, no, I had some really great teachers.
But not everyone has that.
No, I went to 3 different schools, and all 3 I had really great teachers. I had one teacher. I was going to make a short film. I have a film degree, so
nice. So do I.
Yeah, I graduated Columbia College in Chicago, where Janusz Kaminski graduated, as well.
No
as
shit.
And
I love
Kimberly Pierce, I think, graduated. A lot of people. It's a really good school. I recommend it.
If only you could have worked on Boys Don't Cry, my dude. That would have been amazing.
I had a teacher there, and I was going to make a short film, and I told him, God, I can't remember his name, but I told him what it was going to be, and he's like, yeah, so. And I'm like, well, no, I'm going to do this. I'm telling him, he's like, I don't understand why you want to make this movie. It just sounds like you're going to make a movie. And so then I started telling him it would have been my 3rd time moving away from home and how it's really difficult to do that, especially my move to Chicago. When I moved to New York, I was amongst a lot of people who were moving away from home because it was freshman year of college. When I moved from New York to Arizona, a move I did not want to make, I was literally being torn away from my girlfriend at the time, who is now my wife. But there was 5 years between the two.
I'm glad it paid off.
We came back together many years later, but so I didn't want to be in Arizona and had that kind of feeling. And then I moved to Chicago, where I didn't know anybody. And I found that I would hold on to my friends so badly at home that I wouldn't make any friends where I was moving to. And I was telling my film teacher that, I was like, why are you not making that into a movie?
right?
That and I did. I called it Holding On and Letting Go, and I made it into a 6-minute film, and everybody loved it. I'm sure if I looked at it now, I'd find all the problems with it, but it was a silent black and white. And that teacher, he taught me. So now basically everything that I've worked on since has been very, very has had a personal angle. Even the werewolf movie I tried to make was all about very personal things. And I just did a zombie movie, which I'm sending out to film festivals. It's a short, and it's very, very, it's zombie apocalypse from the zombies' point of view. So you get to care about the zombies and understand the zombies. And it had a lot to do with how I feel about animals and how, animals are treated. Coyotes here in California, are treated like they're the devil because they ate somebody's cat. And it's like, you moved into his territory. He's just trying to survive. He's not doing anything wrong. Exactly. He's doing what animals do. And so we did that with the zombie movie. And so I wrote a we were talking about Master Commander. I wrote a medieval kind of swashbuckler type story, Errol Flynn-esque. And it came from an experience I had with a very, very famous person when I was working at a movie theater, and she just came in thinking she was better than everybody else. And so when I wrote,
get those snobs, and it's
and so when I wrote the script, it wasn't me making fun of that kind of person, because I feel like that person actually believes
they read into it too much.
They believe their own hype. And so my character, even though it was a medieval period piece with sword fighting and everything, it had characters that explored that. So I had one character who was very much that kind of person. Then the brother, who was the main character, grew up around that, but didn't understand it. And when he's forced to live amongst the commoner, he learns, wait a minute, what's wrong with just being what's being a regular person? What do we mean because we're royalty, we're better? We're not. These are people too. And so I took that experience that I just didn't understand. And so I learned from that teacher, don't just tell a story. Tell a story that's got real personal involvement for you, and don't be and don't be scared to, really you got to open up your heart to people and let them know that side of you. In the werewolf movie, the two main characters are basically me and my wife. So, and a situation we went through when times were kind of hard, and I was working 2 jobs. We didn't have enough time for each other, and how it affected us and everything. And I put that into this script, which maybe one day
I'm glad that inspired you, though, to.
But that came from this teacher. I would have never thought to put something personal. I would have just thought, like, I'm going to try and find the personal in the character, not realizing, no, you put your personal into that character.
You see people who want to, I don't know, they follow around other morons in school, like the class bully or the class clown. And it's like, and teachers are just known for often being either strict or being really good at educating, but it's so often people forget about, hey, did you actually learn something in that class? Did you actually love going to school?
Yeah.
There's a difference. You can love it. You might not like working at all ever.
I think the better your teachers are, the more you love it. And I think that's the importance of something like Dead Poet Society. I wish more teachers were like the Robin Williams teacher, because if you make school boring and dull, then nobody's going to learn anything, and they're not going to want to pursue anything. Whereas if you can really allow them to find that part of themselves, which is what the Dead Poet Society was, it was that group of kids going up there and finding that part of themselves. I feel like if you get a teacher who can do
that either. Yeah.
No, they don't. And I had many, many great teachers that were like that. I had some at my first school. I had a couple at my second school, but I went to 3 schools thanks to my parents, but graduated with the film degree. And I had another teacher there who taught me the importance of aspect ratios by, he was showing Blade Runner. And after class, and I told him I didn't want to watch it because I hated Blade Runner, because I just did not like Blade Runner. And he's like, have you ever seen it Letterboxd? I'm like, what difference could that possibly make? Because I'd only seen the pan and scan version, and I'd seen it like 3 times. He's like, you've never seen the letterbox version of this? I'm like, no, but what difference could that make? It's all story, right? He's like, you got to sit and watch this. And I went in and I watched
about
it.
Experiences, so he opens that volume up for you. And you're like, there's more.
I went in and I watched it, and it blew me away. I'm like, what am I missing here? And then from that point forward, 2 years later, after I moved to California, got a Laserdisc player, got to watch Jaws in its proper aspect ratio for the first time, and realized that scene where they're talking, where Robert Shaw's telling that story, it's not like 15 shots, it's only like 3. It's just they were cutting from one side of the scene shot to the other, because it wouldn't fit on the TV screen the whole way because of the panning and scanning.
I would always get awkward by that, especially watching movies like Ghostbusters going. I'm like, that looks like that transition, that tracking shot looked awkward. Oh, because how they fitted it initially.
For the younger people who don't know, because everything's kind of shown in its aspect ratio now, televisions used to be more square. And people didn't like the black bars on the top and the bottom. So you would only be looking at the left-hand side of the screen. And then you'd be looking at the right-hand side. Then they'd cut to the left.
You put it in full screen, sometimes you see more detail unnecessarily of certain things.
And so when I was watching, it's a totally different scene in Jaws because it's paced differently. Because now you're 2 people on the screen at the same time or whatever, and that makes everything different. And, and I learned this stuff from teachers. If teachers make it fun, then people
give you a narrative. Just like the filmmakers we admire.
And I feel like, Robin Williams' character in Dead Poets Society, trying to get it back to Peter Weir. I think that he kind of does that because he challenges them. One of the greatest scenes.
And the audience feel challenged because we're not sure where this is going to lead. We're already not used to seeing these actors in these kinds of roles, so that makes us open up. And like you say, the movie doesn't have the kind of sappy music. It doesn't have any elongated shots of the colleges.
It's got that great moment where Robin Williams pulls that poem out of Ethan Hawke.
Great establishing shots, close-ups. Anyone else would have been too much about not done enough staging or just let there be no breakaways or not as motivated. And he's really good at making you feel like you're in the classroom with these guys.
Yeah, well, but he's also key. Number one is he really good at allowing you to feel like these people, like they're not just caricatures. Even Jim Carrey in The Truman Show, who is basically a fake character because he's brought up to be a fake character. So as real as he is, he's still a fake character.
Yeah, the original guy to Helmet was Brian De Palma, and I couldn't imagine. I think De Palma would have been too much about...
It would have been a Hitchcock movie or something.
Yeah, it would have been a Vertigo tribute. And he's like, no. This movie deserved... Because, he'd already done The Cable Guy, which most people don't realize is also a satire on junk food and too much...
And it's a better movie than people give credit for.
Yeah, and so I think this is like the perfect... I would love to even do a double feature one day, like The Cable Guy and Jim Carrey's reality TV double feature is like... Because, it is like this movie... Also, all these movies Weir owns because, like you say, he approached it personally, he made it personal to audiences, and he thought so hard about all of it. He didn't just say, let's be cute with the camera and actors.
It goes back to when I first fell in love with Witness. Here's a movie that another director would have taken and they would have just gone this way with it. We had many movies like You're Living Dangerously.
I want to make a movie like I saw on antenna channels. Okay, well, that's great, but that's not what this material merits.
But he took it, he gives it personality, gives it meaning, and even something as simple as that scene where the bullies are going out or making fun of the Amish. He doesn't only give you a great moment when Harrison Ford lays off, but the scene is, you couldn't take that scene out of the movie because
and the bullies, they feel like real people, not stereotypes like from a Karate Kid type knockoff. Is like you're actually seeing them be like, oh, I thought I was welcome.
Although their clothes don't date very well. But that's a moment that you couldn't take out of the movie because it's the moment where you're thinking, because right before that, he goes into the house, he looks at her as she's bathing, and he says to her the next morning, if we had made love, I'd have to stay or you'd have to go. So the feelings are really building because he feels like if they had sex, they would be together forever. And one of them would have to make that ultimate sacrifice, which would just probably make their lives miserable. But they're at the point now where that's the feelings they have.
It's too much for a movie that has to end in literally 90 minutes too. So it's like,
but I mean, it really kind of says, hey, you know, we're really having these strong feelings for each other, so strong that if we had taken that next step, that's it. We're bound together. We're bound together. And then you go to the next scene and you realize, oh, that would be a big mistake because he couldn't live in her world. And just like we know,
they would have rejected him anyway. He would have been laughed away by even his former cop buddies who would have been like, what are you doing? So it is an interesting, like you say, identity test.
Right. But that scene's about how inside their heads, they wouldn't be able to make it work.
The kid is having to live in so many different dangerous livings, and you really get a good sense of him, even though he barely.
The kid would turn into Charles Bronson. Are you kidding me?
Right. He would have been Harrison Ford Jr. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but anyway, I wanted to one movie we haven't mentioned yet that I think people should search out and check out.
What have we missed?
It was a TV movie that he did called The Plumber.
Oh shit! That's right. How did I?
Yeah. I
actually saw that. Did I see that on TCM? I think I saw that. But let me see. Let me check.
It might have been cut up if you saw it on TCM because there's some nudity and everything in it. Although it says TV movie, so
I think it had a TVMA thing. So, but who knows? I mean,
I think you can watch it on the Criterion channel. In which case, it'll probably.
I think I saw the Criterion logo at the beginning. So.
But that's actually a really good movie as well. That's got a really great moment.
Yeah, I have seen
the plumber. And people should check that out.
That was a movie I did not regret watching because it wasn't, again, much like the cards that ate Paris, you know, is like you're getting such a sense of, again, just how this is anything but easy to discern. You know, there's so many layers to it. And then at the same time, it's not one that makes me say, hey, you know, it's all cut straightforward and easygoing, but at the same time, it's also, I love the experimentation of it.
Mm-hmm.
It welcomes you along for the ride, even though, like you say, it might leave some people too cold for even a psycho thriller. It
also opens up your mind to, or it opens you up to, you know, a talented director's early work. And sometimes you have to go into the early work understanding. I think the Cars That Ate Paris might have suffered from budget because I've worked on stuff. Independent people will come to me with their short film or whatever, and there'll be scenes missing because they didn't have time or money to shoot it. And then you got to have the imagination to rewrite or redub. And you got to figure out how to make it work. And I think that he does that with the Cars That Ate Paris. If there's one weak link, it's the characters of the teens. I wish that there was more characterization there. But it didn't feel like an exploitation movie. That's the other crazy thing. Because you go into this, you're like, okay, this is a video nasty. Nope, not even remotely. No, but you also get to see some of the real smarts of Peter Weir because there are certain things that happen. You know, I'll listen to podcasts and they're talking about it. And I didn't get this. It's like it was right there. He just didn't hand it to you on a silver plate. If you're still with me, I think you'll get it. But if I got to talk down to you, then that betrays me as a filmmaker because I'm not that kind of filmmaker. There's a moment because so basically a guy is in a car accident in this town. His brother dies in the car accident, and you'd find out that the town has been setting up these car accidents, and they live off the parts and stuff. Trade, they use it for trade and stuff like that. And there are some survivors. So now you go into the mayor's house, and you find out that the mayor and his wife couldn't have kids, but yet they have kids. And one of the girls, she wipes the hair away from her ear, and you see a scar. They don't come out and say this was one of the people whose parents probably died in the car accident that they've taken on. They just show you the scar, and he lets you figure it out. You know, and that's a really great filmmaker because he doesn't call you stupid. Witness, there's this great scene in Witness where, you know, little Samuel Lapp is in the police station, and he's there with Harrison Ford, and they're going through the books to see what do you call them, where you can see all the faces. Oh my God, I'm blanking. I feel like an idiot. and he's, I know I don't recognize anybody. No, I don't recognize anybody. So Harrison Ford gets a phone call, and the kid just starts walking around the police station, and he stops at this case, and he looks in there, and there's a picture of Danny Glover as a police officer. He's getting an award. And he looks over to Harrison Ford, who sees something's up, so he walks over, and little Lucas Haas, who plays Samuel, points to the picture. And then Harrison Ford, all he does is he just bends the finger down, and everything. Not a word has been spoken. Samuel didn't have to say, that's the guy that I've been talking about. Harrison Ford didn't have to ask him, is that the guy? No, it's all said right there. Just music and silence. And you get it. And that's a smart filmmaker. And
the title is Witness, if that helps.
Yeah. So, I'm surprised Lucas Haas didn't go on and do some better stuff, but
he has. He was in Inception. He's done a lot of guest spots, and he works with Gus Van Sant quite a lot.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, I'm
trying to think.
But that's just it. I think he was one of those. I hate to compare him to Ricky Schroeder, but I think he was just one of those other just kid actors who just. I'd even compare him probably to Will Wheaton. He knew. Although Will Wheaton's a whole different thing because he had just terrible parents who were his managers, but he was able to just kind of I compare them because basically they weren't worried about they got it right then and there. Not every movie is going to be a success. Not every movie is going to take off. What I got to worry about is where I am in every scene, and if it doesn't happen, that's fine. There's so many degrees. You can be a movie actor, you can be a TV actor, and I think he was just one of those like, hey, I've done all these movies with Walter Hill and everybody else. I can go about however I want it instead of try to be a Shirley Temple 80s male equivalent.
Right.
Everything.
Yeah. Well, we lose a lot of really great kid actors because their parents don't really know how to. They just want the money. They don't really know how to.
They don't actually
make
consider
it work.
them people.
Yeah, and they should consider them differently because they, when you get somebody who can get through it properly, you get a Jodie Foster. Now I'm thinking right now, Lucas Haas, he had done a movie. One of these days, I got to rewatch it. Maybe I'll even recommend it on my site. Called The Lady in White with Katherine Hellman. And it's a ghost story. And I believe the last version I saw, there's a director's cut out there. And I love Katherine Hellman as a television actress. She was on Soap, and she was amazing. And she was also on Coach for a number of years. But it's this very simple ghost story kind of thing. I don't like it when I see kid actors really blow it out of the park, and then their very next thing is something that's so obvious that they just took
Chloe Grace Moritz, I think, is a good example of someone who can just bring it.
I'm not a big fan. I like some of her stuff, and then some of the stuff I'm questionable on. She did this one.
I hate a lot of her movies, but I'm just saying, just the actors, is like she's pretty mature.
Yeah. Well, and I think that if the parents would let them more kid actors kind of, really break through, they would have larger careers. What's her name? Who was in Monster? Fanning. She was in Casper.
Christina Ricci.
She was very smart with her career. Because she was known as the kid in all the kid movies and all that. But then she went and did Buffalo 66, which was a movie that I didn't necessarily like, but really showed a totally different side of her. She also did Opposite of Sex. She didn't just start doing, let herself be remembered for the kid role. She said, I'm going to go show you guys that I can challenge myself. She was in Monster. And now she's got a career that's been lasting her a long time. Mm-hmm. Jodie Foster too. It's strange to think of how far Jodie Foster's gone, considering she was in 2 movies opposite Scott Baio when she was a kid. Both movies, I don't remember much about Foxes, but I remember liking it. But Bugsy Malone is fantastic.
We'll have to rewatch it.
It's a musical with kids, musical gangster movie with kids, and everything's kid oriented. Literally, like when they shoot their guns, they shoot pies. They don't shoot bullets. Or when they're driving around in cars, they got pedal cars. And it's a musical, and it's by Alan Parker's first film, and Alan Parker's another one of my favorite directors. It's just fantastic. So back to it.
There's so many great guys who I definitely will have to have you back and discuss, because I'm with you. They're fantastic. And
well, I'm hoping I'm coming off okay.
I think everyone's got the message is like, this guy is the rare, a mixture of important stories with, again, based on character gimmicks instead of worrying about the style and how it looks and everything. That all comes in later, and making his money back and having launching both roles for actors and having established people in unrecognizable roles. That
think about it this way. How many actors and directors do you see that make movies where it's so obvious they made it just for the money?
Endless.
Yeah, and one of the reasons Tom Cruise is one of my favorite actors is because you can't, with the exception of maybe like Cocktail and Losing It early in his career when he had to go after the money because he was just starting his career, you can't name a movie of his that feels like he did it for the money kind of movie. Even the bad ones, the ones that didn't work, it looks like they tried to make the best
Mission Impossible clearly.
But if you watch,
about money, but he likes it because he gets to be in control of it. His character, where he goes, it's a physical assertion test.
But if you watch those movies, not a single one of them, with the exception of maybe the second one, none of them feel like, hey, we did this just to make the money. No, they do truly feel like we got really good stories, we got really good this. They feel like they're all solid movies.
He really believes in the character, is like, no one else played this character. He was a character created for the movie based off a pre-established show. And I think that's just it. We get so many people, they're ready to get into a giant franchise, but they don't know how to take this.
So I look at his choices of movies, and Christian Bale might be another one that's
dynamite actor.
Looking for this. Yeah. You look at their movies, and you never feel like, oh, they did that just for the money. Oh, they did that just for the money.
They believed in it.
I feel like Peter Weir's a director like that. I can't think of one of these movies that feels like a money movie. The closest would probably be Witness, because I've had the commercial feel of, how you can pitch it. But then deep down, it's not, because he then went in and told the Amish story.
Oh, yeah. And I'm sure Dead Poet Society and Green Card started out as just simple run-of-the-mill, movies because they're by Disney. But I'm sure, once he came aboard,
don't feel like money movies when you're
once
done
he came aboard, I'm sure he scrapped it out and said, we're starting from scratch, guys. We are not making what you think you're seeing. We'll make enough so that when it comes time to make the trailer, people are going to see it anyway. But
that's the importance, though, is when you watch these movies, and I feel this missing from a lot of filmmakers of today. I think we got a couple that are not this. Like, I really like David Lowery a lot, and but a lot of times it just feels like they're just making the movie to make the movie. Whereas Peter Weir and a lot of Spielberg stuff and Alan Parker and people like that,
it's going to happen. Especially from
this, if you look at the filmmakers from the 70s and the 80s, their movies just feel like these are people who are really passionate about these movies and they really want to tell these stories.
They had one shot and they were going to treat each one like it's the last check they'll ever get.
Yeah. And I don't feel that way when I go to the movies a lot.
Every other indie filmmaker, even if it's a good person I like, there's sometimes signs that there's been a dispute behind the scenes, and we'll only find out maybe 5 years down the road, hey, someone came in and reshot the movie. But every indie filmmaker who's gone on to do like a horror movie for like Blumhouse or a Marvel movie doesn't ever feel at all like they did anything except maybe called a few shots, and the rest was the Disney guys come in and shoot the rest of the movie with the stunt guys.
Yeah, I don't know. You can look at people like Wes Anderson and people like that and think to yourselves, well, there are people like that out there that are really trying to do real quality stuff. But the stuff that's really being put in front of us feels very generic at times. And I mean, there are a couple of filmmakers that are new that I really like, and like I like Jordan Peele. I didn't like Us, and I didn't necessarily like Get Out. but I see so much potential in him. It's crazy that I think that when he nails it, it's going to be amazing. He's going to give us an amazing movie. The same thing with Ryan
Lovecraft
Coogler.
Country and his version of the Twilight Zone. I think you'll take someone away from those.
Yeah, I feel like Ryan Coogler's another one of those. David Lowery, who gave us the amazing Pete's Dragon, but also last year, was it last year? I think it was last year, did The Green Knight, Old Man and a Gun. I'd like to see Ben Affleck direct a little bit more. He's given us some pretty good stuff.
I think he will, especially if you've seen his latest crime movies. But yeah, Lowery, I was kind of mixed on it. I really liked The Old Man and the Gun, but I didn't really care for the Disney movies. But I understood why they kind of.
You didn't like Pete's Dragon? I can't
get into anything Disney related now.
See, but that's the thing about Pete's Dragon is I went and saw that because somebody asked me to review it for their website, and I didn't want to see it. It's like, first of all, Pete's Dragon, really? You're going to reboot Pete's Dragon? But I've not liked any of the reboots that Disney's done, with the exception of Cinderella. I thought they did some interesting stuff with the evil stepmother. I don't
remember it, but I did see it and find it a good lead in that one.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. But the only reboot that I've loved has been Pete's Dragon, because it didn't feel like a reboot. It felt like a filmmaker making a really good movie. It didn't even feel like a Disney movie. It just felt like a good movie.
I kind of had fun with Magnificent, but I can understand people not liking that one.
Oh, I hated that one.
It's all good.
You can't tell me that you don't like Pete's Dragon, you like Maleficent, and this continues.
Oh, shit. Oh, shit.
No, but anyway. he did a movie called Ghost Story 2, which is really good, and so there are the filmmakers out there. I think that if you look at filmmakers from like 70s and 80s, like Peter Weir, I wish he would make another movie, because these are filmmakers who really care about what
that is what's
doing.
Weird is like that last one underperformed, but just about everyone I know who's seen it, even people who aren't into hard to watch subject matter, really dug it. So I was like, did he just say, hey, I've lived a good life, I don't have to do more movies? Or what?
Maybe
he's part of the National Registry of Australia or something like that for film.
Well, he was one of the first, because there wasn't really a film industry when he started. IMDb has a projects in development called The Keep. So, but he's also getting up there in age. According to IMDb, he was born in 44. So
he would be
54, 64, 74, 94, 104, 114. So he's almost 80 years old.
Ooh, yeah.
But I'd like to see something else from him.
At least one more. Just one more before just saying, death takes you, or,
I feel like I like The Way Back. I'd like to see him end on. I'd like him to see him end on an Academy Award winner. Because
you're right, Lifetime Achievement Award.
Yeah, he's been nominated too many times, and I like The Way Back. I think it's great. I think it's got really great performances, and it's a really great story. And it's a story we've seen before, but they add certain elements to it.
They did it so differently.
The way they added the I can never pronounce her name, so I'm looking at Saoirse Ronan. The way they added her character in, because they gave her this relationship with the Ed Harris character, and at first he doesn't even want her there. He wants to leave her behind, and then this relationship just builds, and it doesn't feel fake. It just totally feels genuine. There's a part where
it's like Master and Commander. We're seeing hardship in a time of when no one can get their shit together.
Right. Well, I mean, there's this moment where she tells him the story of why she's wandering around and following them, and why she's run away. And you're like, oh, that's so sad. And then Harris is like, yeah, that's not true. Don't lie to me again. Suspicious. And it's fantastic, because then when the truth comes out, it's more emotional. So yeah, he's a
lot of stuff for more people to seek out and check out. This has been great having you on the show, my dude. I have to get onto one more meeting before I go downstairs and go to a party.
That's fine. But
thank you ever so much for being on here. So what is your podcast, Underexposed Cinematic Treasure?
Well, I don't have a podcast yet. I've done a couple of recordings that will hopefully become a podcast, but I have a website called Underexposed Cinematic Treasures. I know it's long, but that's what it is. And basically, I got really tired of seeing all the people putting hate on movies out there on the internet. So I decided I wanted to do a movie that put love on movies, and showed people, movies that they can love. But then I realized that there were, what's the point of me writing articles on stuff like Godfather and Apocalypse Now? People already know they need to see those movies. So I decided, why don't I introduce them to movies that I know they're going to love, that maybe they haven't seen or haven't heard of, or they've heard of and thought was going to be bad, but is actually really good.
A second take, but done with actual indulgence instead of just, well, I saw it randomly one day on Netflix. It's not that bad. It's like, no, there's a whole context. I've grown up loving this. It's time to give a voice.
It's called Underexposed Cinematic Treasures, and it's everything from very commercial movies. Like, I have a thriller on there called Threads. I put Kubo and the Two Strings up there, which everybody's heard of, but nobody saw.
Right.
To a movie called, I'm sorry, the first movie, the thriller, is called Triangle, but it's a typical kind of thriller, but it's really good. And then of course, Kubo and the Two Strings. But then I also put a movie up there called Threads by about nuclear war that is one of the scariest movies you'll ever see. And everybody knows A Day After, but they don't know Threads. So also movies of all kinds. It's not just going to be art house movies. I'll put up a movie that should have been a commercial success. It's like so commercial, but yet nobody saw it.
You're just as likely to even do an indie film that played at a festival one day and then went straight to Blockbuster shelves and stars.
Yeah, there's really only one kind of movie that you might not find on there unless, and I'll ask people this, and that's documentaries, because I don't really watch documentaries, but I do have a page called for the fans called Fan Recommendation. So anybody who wants to give their own recommendation, just email me or use my contact. You can email me at info@underexposedcinematictreasures.com or use the contact page. Send me a 4-line review of a movie that you think is underseen, that you want more people to see, and I'll put that up. And if it's a documentary, all the better, because I don't really watch them. So
this has been a delight. Thank you, my dude.
We'll return after these messages.
Do you ever find yourself thinking about who would win in a fight between Goku and Superman? Hi, I'm James Gavsey, and on the Who Would Win show, me and my co-host Ray ignore anything important happening in the outside world and debate fictional battles between characters from comics, movies, and video games.
We got a new show every week, and almost always am I the winner.
Yeah, not true, Ray.
In the past, we've discussed such matches as Captain America versus Darth Vader, Solid Snake versus the Iron Giant, classic matchups like RoboCop versus Terminator, and even the Muppets versus Sesame Street.
That one was crazy. So if you're a fan of geek culture and love a spirited debate, check out the Who Would Win show wherever you get your podcasts, or check us out at whowouldwinshow.com.
We let things pile up in the DVR, we add them to our queues, we wait for the DVDs and Blu-rays. We time shift. The Time Shifters Podcast. Sci-fi, horror, fantasy, superheroes, comedy, action, film, television, maybe some not-so-current events. Find us on iTunes or at timeshifterspodcast.com.
Cool thing about Blind Knowledge is we are in multiple countries. We are worldwide all across the globe. We are in the US, we are in the UK, we are in Canada, Germany, India, Japan. We're in Australia, y'all. BlindKnowledge.com. Now back to the feature presentation.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening.
It's a jacked up review show.